I think that's okay. And now, because it's all impromptu, it's professional really, I've got to go back to YouTube. It's okay because no one's here yet because I didn't pre-announce it. True Hunt, and I've got to find my live thing and I've got to copy the link. This is going to be the last one that I'm doing like impromptu on the road for quite a while, I think. There we go.
It's okay because no one's here yet because I didn't pre-announce it.
That's nice. The audio actually works too. That's fine. Share, copy. Hong Kong too, while we're at that. Looks cool, doesn't it? G'day guys, good. JMR, thanks for joining guys. Let me just drop this into the buffer tweet and then we're ready to get down to serious business. Yep, that's fine. Cool, I can add location. Cool. Can I share it now? Share now. Share now with everything. Okay. Audio's good. Oh yeah, that's nice. Thanks, mate. I appreciate that. You don't always know. Hong Kong. Hong Kong beer, of course. What else is it going to be? It's 5 o'clock somewhere. It's 4 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon in Hong Kong. I think when I did this from home, did that all go? Still going? Tweet's still going? I think when I did this from home, where was I? When was I? That was Australia Day, that's right, it was Monday. So I'd pushed it back a bit because we'd come back from Europe, and I thought I was going to do it while I was in Europe, going to do it while we were in Norway, and there wasn't a good time and place. Did it at home, still sharing, came back late, and yeah, when did we get back? Got back very, very early Monday morning, and then left Friday morning to come here. Amber, not bad. The reason it's all so close together, and I really, really didn't like this pattern, by the way. When you fly east, the jet lag is like much, much, much worse for all sorts of reasons. And partly it's like going against the sun, and partly it's just like the flight times were kind of crap. You just end up with this like massively long flight that sort of goes through 2 nights from Dubai back home. And you get home and you're just wrecked for days. So to leave there and then fly, we actually flew from Brisbane to Singapore, 7 and a bit hours, 2 hours behind, not too bad, but you're literally going back in time from the time that I've just flown over, coming from Dubai. Had a night there, flew here to Hong Kong yesterday. So I think we're pretty much leveled out now. Oh, the request timed out. Is it not sharing on my social channels? Come on, man. Do I retry or do I copy and paste? Oh, replace the link attachment. No, cancel. What's everyone else doing? Well, I'm trying to make all the computer things work. Should I just do it manually? Maybe just do it on Twitter, because then less people will come and complain that I've got AI and all something. No, that's actually worked on some channels. It's worked on Twitter. Screw it, we'll just leave it. Okay, so yeah, got here to Hong Kong yesterday, and it's been, I think it has been 15 years since I've been in Hong Kong. From what you can see in the video, it's massive. When I say massive, like it's just massively dense. And the thing that really gets me, even just like looking across there now, is like I've been in a lot of big cities and so on, but it's just the density of people within the buildings here. So when you look at and obviously you can only see so much here in the video, but if you look it up, like Hong Kong, you know, skyscrapers, it's just, we're looking up today, the apartments on average are about 35 square meters. So if you're working in the old model, about 350 and a bit square feet. And that's the average size apartment. So they jam so many of them into these buildings, and the buildings are massive. And what's kind of wild about it too is that any building that's getting work done on it, or any building that's under construction, with the exception of one that we saw, all the scaffolding is still bamboo. How old is that? Like 2026. And they're building bamboo poles up and around the whole building. And not just like a few floors, but like 80 stories high. Like it's crazy. It is ridiculous. And of course, I had that really tragic fire last year as well, because bamboo happens to be really, really flammable, apparently. But yeah, as well, it's just bamboo scaffolding. Anyway, the reason why the timeline has ended up so tight wasn't the original plan, but whilst we were away in Europe, we had a request from Interpol to come and do a talk here in Hong Kong. So there's an Interpol cybercrime law enforcement style event here tomorrow, and it was just one of those things. It was like, look, all those relationships with law enforcement agencies are just really, really useful, because they're trying to do so much with very often so little. They obviously like the support of private enterprises. They're doing really, really good, important work. Catching all the sorts of cyber criminals we talk about here, and a bunch that I inevitably interact with for data breach stuff, is super important. So when there's an offer to say, hey, come and talk about data breaches and I guess the cybers and things like that, it's something I pretty much always say yes to. And it will be very similar to what I did for Europol in The Hague a couple of months ago. A little tweak here and there. But yeah, that was why we've now turned up back here in Hong Kong with only 4 days of downtime. And again, like, it's just not an ideal time frame, but it's a great audience. Just very coincidentally, Charlotte and I were both saying that it'd be cool to go to Hong Kong. Like, she had not been here before, I had not been here for a long time. It's a cool city, so the planets aligned, and now here we are. Let me have a look at the comments here. Brendo, get out of here with your sunny afternoon. Apparently raining here in Victoria. It looks sunny, but when we walked out this morning, it was 11 degrees. It was cool, and now it's actually 18 degrees. This is all Celsius, again, the modern temperature. So yeah, it's not warm. Like Singapore yesterday Singapore's always 30 degrees. But here it was a little bit chilly. So we're literally like jumper and jacket and stuff walking around earlier on. Much nicer now. Lovely here in the sun. Apparently the sun sets that way as well. So it's going to be quite nice tonight. If it weren't for having to go out and eat Peking duck. Anyway, we'll see some of it. Richard, audio is good, very good. JMR, did you get into Dubai chocolate while you were there? I don't even know if that's where it's from. Yeah, the hint is in the name, mate. It is from Dubai. We had some. I find it a little bit, it's just almost like a little bit odd. You know, interestingly enough, the best chocolates that we've had for a very long time was from Singapore. When we were in Singapore in September, the school I was there doing some talks for gave us these Mr. Bucket chocolates, and they were absolutely nuts, outstanding. So we're actually going to have a night back in Singapore on the way home, spend a little bit more time with Interpol there, and buy a bunch of those chocolates. That is definitely on the list. But yeah, Dubai chocolate, our daughter loves Dubai chocolates. Apparently it's a big thing. So Matthew's taking bets. How long until we have an OpenClaw root cause data breach impacting a major company? We'll talk about that. It's on the list. We'll come back to it at the end. Yeah. All right, we'll save that. Save that thought. JMR, I can't wait until they start connecting buildings with sky roads. Yeah, whatever happened to those? Where is there flying planes, man? It's 2026 already. Matthew's found an early morning walk run during sunrise helps alleviate jet lag. Yeah, look, exercise is like a massive thing for jet lag. Now, normally when we're at home anyway, normally our normal schedule is we get up at 5 o'clock each morning, go for about a 4K walk down the beach, clears your head, it's lovely. Today, as we're getting through the jet lag, what does my watch say we did? I've done 16,500 steps already, so that's something. Very hard to see from the pictures, but walked around, well, from the video, walked down the ferry, went over, so we're on the Kowloon side. So Kowloon is the mainland side. You could walk to China from here. Well, this is kind of China, but it's like special China. You could walk to, that sounds bad now, non-special China, original China from here on the Kowloon side, Hong Kong Island, other side. That's where a lot of the cool mountains and things are. So walked over there, did a very, very long walk, very, very high. Oh, no, lost for words, am I? Up a very, very steep mountain. So, yeah, you're right though, mate. Walking exercise, fantastic for jet lag. So that's good. Matthew said, 15 years, do you still recognise parts of it? Yeah, parts of it I do, actually. So, it's still pretty similar. It was very developed when I was here. In fact, I think I've been here probably half a dozen times before now, starting in 1992. So whilst it was still British owned, 1997 it got handed back to the Chinese, still as a special region. I think it remains like a special region that is autonomous until something like 2047. And then I was here a couple of times in the late 90s. I was here a couple of times in the noughties with my old Pfizer job. We had some things to do here. So yeah, no, it's bits of it are definitely still familiar, but you know, I've been to so many different cities and so many different countries in that time that sometimes everything becomes a bit of a blur. Stuff I was doing like 2 weeks ago becomes a bit of a blur. Charlotte go, hey, remember we were at that place the other day? I was like, were we? What was it? It's a blur. Rax is running in Sydney too. Yeah, Jama, heard someone say something similar about just being outside during sunrise. So helps reset jet lag. I got one of the jet lag apps when I was in Oslo before we flew back, knowing that it was going to be a bit hellish to sort of come back and then have to head back straight away again. And I also tried just asking ChatGPT. It's like, this is my flight details. What's the best way to manage jet lag? You know, when should I sleep and eat and everything? And it's like, well, the first thing is, don't have any alcohol on the flight. And I'm like, what's the second thing? The big thing it said was, try and create light when you're meant to have light, which is effectively your target environment, your target time zone, and create dark when you're meant to have dark. So yeah, being outside in the sunlight during the daylight hours helps a lot. What's kind of made the jet lag even harder is we flew out of Brisbane at like 10:30 in the morning on Friday, land in Singapore in 4:30 in the afternoon. Times are good, but you're spending 7.5 hours sitting on an airplane seat, and of course you fall asleep. So we end up getting like 4 hours sleep or something on that flight, and then waking up a little bit early yesterday morning, and then we're on the 4-hour flight from Singapore to Hong Kong, and it's like, I'll just have a tiny nap, and then an hour later. So just being able to reset your clock has been difficult. We will get there though, by the time we get home. JMR says, Mississippi barbecue sauce is made in Ohio, so I don't make an assumption based on names anymore. Oh, okay. Yeah, well, fair point. All right, data breachy stuff. And what did I say we're going to do here? SoundCloud, and let's wrap them all up together. SoundCloud and Panera. Now, both of these incidents were sets of data. I did, no, that's right, it was SoundCloud. So I think I must have done SoundCloud like on Monday after I did the last video, but it was dumped with a whole bunch of other stuff. So Shiny Hunters, collective brand name, made up of people who seem to be quite good at breaking into stuff, have teamed up with Lapsus, Scattered Spiders and so on before, and dumped a whole bunch of other stuff that was related to the Qantas breach and everything last year as well. Seem to splinter off into different groups, get together. It's obviously a bit of a loose collective. Get arrested every now and then. Some of them, the typical demographic that we all know from data breaches like this, young guys, very often teenagers, very often even children, certainly starting out doing this stuff as children, which incidentally ties back into what I was talking about to Europol a couple of months ago. That was the Cyber Offenders Prevention Conference. So some of that will be in what I talk to Interpol about tomorrow as well. And it's just a bit of a cycle. I have an observation on this actually, I'll come back to in a moment. So let's talk about the fundamentals of these two incidents. They both got dumped onto a dark web website. I think there's a total of 8 different websites that are on there now. Very, very public. Doesn't matter that they're dark web, they're very, very public. Panera, SoundCloud, we'll talk about those. On there is also Crunchbase, Betterment, Edmunds, CarMax, a couple of others I'm forgetting. They seem to have a lot less sort of customer records, which is the thing that we're most interested in for Have I Been Pwned, because that's the email addresses of individuals and corporations. So I always start with the ones that have the most impact, because that's obviously going to do the most good early on. Let me go and have a look at what I said was in these. In fact, I'll just go and have a look at literally at the Have I Been Pwned website. Who's been pwned? Here we go, SoundCloud. I thought it might have been in SoundCloud, and I was not. I wondered also, I'll read the description, I'll tell you what I wanted. December, just gone, SoundCloud announced it had discovered unauthorized activity on its platform. Incident allowed an attacker to map publicly available SoundCloud profile data to email addresses for approximately 20% of its users. Now, there's 30 million people in this, so I guess that means 150 million-ish users. When I read that description, or rather when I read their description, and I've paraphrased it, but effectively, public data mapped to email addresses, it sounded like an enumeration vector where you could throw an email address at an API and then get back a bunch of personal data. I don't think that's what's actually happened, because one of the things that I've I guess increasingly looking at when verifying a data breach is, are there email addresses that contain the service's name? So for example, is the word SoundCloud in any of the email addresses? Not just to the right of the @ symbol, but to the left. Do you have SoundCloud at personaldomain.com? Do you have my name plus SoundCloud at whateverdomain.com? And there were hundreds of instances, just off the top of my head, there was certainly a triple-digit number of SoundCloud in the aliases. Now, normally when someone enumerates an API based on email address, they've gone to another data breach. So I forget which one it was recently, but one of the ones had a 100%, I'm going to know what it is as soon as I see it listed here. It was the Instagram one. So Instagram had 100% of the email addresses already in Have I Been Pwned when I loaded the data. And then I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder which breaches they were in. And they were all in one of these shady marketing data aggregator enrichment ones. So inevitably someone had gone to that breach, got all the email addresses and gone, chuck them at an Instagram endpoint and then see what comes back. That's very unlikely what happened with SoundCloud, because you've got unique SoundCloud email address in there. So at a guess, someone is enumerating SoundCloud, or has enumerated SoundCloud in a different way. So yeah, endpoint /username, and then they've got a list of usernames somewhere. Or maybe they've even made up the usernames, or taken the usernames from somewhere else. Could have been that. Regardless, they have not been querying by email address. Whatever that API was has returned email and then a whole bunch of other stuff. Now, what else was here in that breach? Impacted data included 30 million unique email addresses, names, usernames, avatars, follower and following counts, and in some cases the user's country. Now, in this case, that is a lot of public data, and I've phrased this carefully, because if SoundCloud would know this is in Have I Been Pwned, because 30 million people, I think there were over 200,000 of our subscribers in there that we notified. A proportion of them are going to get pissed off that SoundCloud exposed the data. They're going to go to SoundCloud and they're going to say, hey, Have I Been Pwned to this? So I'll make sure I get these descriptions really, really accurate. And I wanted to make the point that it was public data. That's the term that they've used. And really, when you have a look at most of what's in there, it is very benign. And in fact, even if we take away for a moment the fact that they've had this terrible incident, like the personal impact, particularly when it's SoundCloud, you know, when it's social media and people are talking about their deepest, darkest thoughts, or things related to religion, politics, sexuality, all the things that we would deem sensitive, and your personal info gets exposed, that's a different story. The SoundCloud incident, I think, is just more a frustration for people than having any particular harm compared to many other data breaches. There's the last thing I said here, and this is where I want to go talking about this, Shiny Hunters and Co. Says the attackers later attempted to extort SoundCloud before publicly releasing the data the following month. So, what appears to be happening with these guys, and there's a hint in the file name, what appears to be happening is they're grabbing data and they're attempting to shake them down. And inevitably those shakedowns aren't working. Certainly hasn't worked with any of those. I highly doubt it is working with any other company of any significance. The concept of paying a ransom for someone who has taken your data illegally and tried to extort you, and then promising not to dump it publicly later on. The premise of doing that is just nuts. Like, don't do that. It makes no sense whatsoever. So they've attempted to extort them. That's clearly failed. When they dumped the data, the file names for each one of those data breaches included should have paid the ransom. So, clearly signalling to every other organisation they speak to, either pay the ransom or we'll dump your data. Now, again, they're not going to pay the ransom. So, any organisation that is the victim of this group, if they do the same thing over and over again, yeah, your data is just going to be dumped. Which brings us to Panera. Panera Bread. Is there a Panera Bread anywhere other than in the US? Don't know. Big company though, very popular. January, Panera Bread suffered a data breach that exposed 14 million records. After an attempted extortion failed, same story again, attackers published the data publicly, which included 5.1 million unique email addresses. I included the 14 million record quote because that was what was in all the press. And if people see me say 5.1 million, they're going to go, hang on a second, everyone else is saying 14. Yes, but there's a difference between the number of records and the number of unique email addresses. I don't really want to get into this, like trying to track the number of records in an incident, because where does that end? Like if there are, let's say there are logs of activity that people have, and every person ends up having 100 records in their log of activity and all that gets done publicly. Do I really want to use a figure that says, hey, 100 million records when there's only 1 million people? I don't like that idea. Anyway, we'll see how we go with that in the future. But again, the part of this was reinforcing and repeating the information which had already been disclosed publicly, just to, I guess, not throw new variables in. After an attempted extortion failed, the attackers published the data publicly, which included 5.1 million unique email addresses along with associated account information such as names, phone numbers and physical addresses. Panera Bread subsequently confirmed, and I've quoted them exactly here, this is the quote they gave Reuters, the data involved is contact information and that authorities were notified. And it is contact information, email, phone, name, physical addresses. Not defined as sensitive. You can be pissed off that it was leaked. I'm not arguing that. I'll grant you that. But not legally defined as sensitive in any reasonable fashion. Very, very low risk. It's Panera Bread, you know. It's like, what, you might get some spam, you might get some phishing, but no one's logging into your accounts. No one's stealing your identity or impersonating you. No one's calling your wife and telling you that you look at certain pictures on certain sites. It's bread. So, not particularly serious impact. Coming back to the ransom and the extortion situation, I feel, and I was listening to Risky Biz when I was driving out to the airport on Friday, and Pat and Adam and Joe Tidy from the BBC were talking about this as well. But there feels like there is a different vibe to a lot of these young folks, it's the term we use now, a lot of these young folks who are doing the hacking. Like if we go back to like the lull sects and the anonymouses and the lizard squads and all these kind of groups, like there are anarchic, causing chaos, breaking into things, dumping data all over the place. But the tone we're getting from whether it's just Shiny Hunters Group or Shiny Laps of Scattered Spiders or the rest of it, the tone from these guys, knowing from what we've seen from arrests as well, that it is predominantly very young, if not sometimes legally children guys, this seems to be much more a combination of malicious and financially motivated. And I don't think that's going to be doing anyone any favours when they get picked up for this. And you keep doing it, you do get picked up. Clearly, they're trying to turn this into money. The extortions, over and over again. I was going to say the bravado, but the bravado is not anything new from what we had back in the sort of 2011 era of this sort of thing happening. But the attempt to turn criminal activity into money for personal gain and the threat of doing damage to corporate entities should that personal gain not be realised, that's the thing that I feel is really, really different now to what it was even a few years ago. It's like, yeah, sure, it happened, but a few years ago it was like, you know, the people doing the criminal hacking for financial motive are like the Russian ransomware gangs. And now it's like, no, it's the kids. It's the kids these days. Yeah, as Marek says, so basically they're grifters. They are, but they're, this is a concern I always have. They're young guys who've gradually headed down the wrong path, who've started out gaming. It always starts out with gaming. It's fascinating. Every time I talk to particularly law enforcement agencies focusing a lot on like youth cyber offender prevention, so on, it's like it always starts with gaming, and then it's with cheats and DDoSes, and it gradually just descends into this state that eventually leads people to taking this one step at it. Like they don't wake up one day and they're good kids, and the next day they wake up and they're trying to extort Panera bread for, I assume, millions of dollars. It's something that happens little step by little step by little step, and it just worries me that we're not getting earlier intervention when these people are heading down this path, because, you know, they're not violent criminals. You know, for the most part, these are decent kids that have just gradually taken the wrong path. And if you're one of these and you're listening to this, now is a great time to stop this, whilst you still can. There'll be a point in time where you won't have a choice. And you keep it up long enough, you do get caught. Everyone gets caught. Look at some of the comments here. Gordon, I don't recall having a SoundCloud account, then realised it was my Google login with my old email. The thing is, like, do you recall all the accounts you've made, right? Like, this obviously depends on a combination of how old you are, how prolific you are on the internet, how many different things you use. But I've got the only way I have any idea of the number of accounts I've made is because I've got a password manager. But for the vast majority of people, if you're like, can you remember how many places you gave your email address to last year? They've got no idea, absolutely no idea. I do have a SoundCloud account. I'm not in there. That's the first thing I looked for. I was like, maybe I'm in there. It could be that. Makes a verification easy. But no, I was not in there, which is interesting. But then again, I'm part of the 80% on that basis. JMR says there was no money in it when we were dumb kids. Well, I don't know if I'd agree with that, because again, like, we had ransomware crews, we had people shaking organizations down for money. So there was that. But there's, listen to the podcast. I'm trying to remember, like, it was Pat or Adam or Joe who made a really interesting point. Oh, that was right. They said, I think it was Joe. So Joe's written a book about the guy who hacked Vestamo. I've got to remember the guy's name because it's in my talk for Interpol. The Finnish guy hacked Vestamo in 2018. And if you don't remember the story with Vestamo, Vestamo was, I'm not sure if they still exist, but certainly was the Finnish psychotherapy service. And this guy hacked Vestamo. And I only realised, listening to the podcast, this guy was part of Lizard Squad many years earlier on as well. In fact, he was part of the crew that had knocked the PlayStation network, I think it was PSN, knocked offline at Christmas. Was it 2013, 2014? So after kids had just got their PlayStations or their Xboxes, or I can't remember which one it was, they'd managed to basically DDoS the service offline. And apparently this kid, and he was absolutely a kid at the time because he was 20 years old in 2018 when he committed the Vestamo atrocity we'll talk about in a moment. But he came from that background. So Vestamo, Finnish psychotherapy service, he hacked them psychotherapy notes for 30,000 people. The most intimate personal information you could imagine, telling your psychotherapist. He tried to shake them down for money. They said no, so he started emailing the individuals. In fact, I've literally got it here in my Prezzo, ready for tomorrow. There's this is what the ransom note said. Where is it? It's on this slide just here. Play that. If I jump through to that slide. One thing that's actually made it a little bit harder tomorrow was it Ernest Hemingway or someone, classic famous person like that, who's like, I didn't have time to write a short story, so I wrote a long one. I have to make this short. This has to be, normally I would talk for 45, 50 minutes, 10 minutes Q&A or something. In this case, it's 15 to 20 minutes was the guidance, with 5 minutes of Q&A, which actually is hard because you've got a lot less information you get across. Here is the shakedown that this guy sent the individuals. 24th of October 2020. Dear whoever the victim is. Now this is translated as well from Finnish to English, but it seems to be accurate. As you most likely already know from the news, turns out it was just him, royal we have breached the Vestamo patient database. We are contacting you because you have used Vestamo therapy and or psychiatric services. Because the management of this company has refused to take responsibility for its own mistakes, the wording in there, again, keep in mind it's translated, but I'm sure the sentence is the same. The company is the one who's at fault. This is his position. The company is the one who is at fault. They refuse him to take responsibility, which in his brain would have meant refuse to give him money. Because they're refusing to take responsibility for its own mistakes, we, unfortunately, have no choice but to ask you to pay to keep your personal information secure. And that's why he's in jail now. He went on the run. There was like an Interpol international warrant, or whatever the right terminology is, out for him. I think he got picked up in Spain from memory. Really, really bad incident. Listening to the podcast the other day, apparently there were suicides out of it. I need to fact check that actually before I do this talk. But anyway, a point I was getting to, I think it was Joe who's written the book about, I don't think it's just about this incident, but there's obviously a lot of this in there. But he said what has been fueling this sort of behaviour, one of the things that have been fueling this sort of behaviour, and the reason it's much more prevalent now than what it was, say, 15 years ago, is things like the ubiquitous availability of cryptocurrency. It's so much easier to ask people for ransoms when you can play with a currency which can be anonymised to an extent. There are a couple of other factors as well. I'm trying to remember what they were. Not sure. I'll have to listen to it again. I was jet lagged at the time. But yeah, there's definitely a change in the change in the zeitgeist of the actors who are now, committing these hacks. Marek says Darknet Diaries. Was this in Darknet Diaries? Oh yeah, Jack Strider did a good part. Sorry, I missed the bit before. Jack Strider did a good part, two-part series about the golden days of hacking. That's on Darknet Diaries. Gordon says it's so old, it was before I had a password manager. Last logged in probably 15 years ago. Wow. I suspect I last used SoundCloud actively when I was still living in Sydney, which is more than 10 years ago. I have a very, very clear recollection when I had a very stressful period where I just hated my job. And I'd listened to one particular track and it was on SoundCloud. So that would have been, 2014, who knows? But yeah, that was post password manager for me, so it is in there. Last thing, how are we going for time here? 33 minutes. Claude. Not the Claude from Anthropic, which has confused everyone and caused Claude Bot to rename to Molt Bot, which I think is now renamed to OpenClaw. That whole space. Now, I, like many of you, probably just saw this pop up, particularly on Twitter. I just seem to get a lot of traction where I'd be scrolling through my tweets and so on, and I see this thing pop up over and over and over again. And yes, I see a lot of AI stuff. We all see a lot of AI stuff. And some things will get traction sometimes. But this was just like, why is this so dominant? And people are like, hey, I've turned this thing on and it's changed my life. And of course, you're suspicious of everything you read on the internet now as well. So I was like, well, that's probably bullshit, but there's a lot of people saying it. So before I flew from Brisbane back to Singapore on Friday, I just downloaded a whole bunch of different Claude Bot things. And of course, as I was downloading things, the name changed, etc. And I watched a bunch of videos along the way, and I'd love to talk about what I learned because it's kind of fascinating. So we'll look at it in two different ways. The geek nerd appreciating the technology for what it is and some of the things it can do. It's obviously pretty amazing. Like, it's super, super cool that it is open source, self-hosted. can integrate into all the other things. And it can be your own personal AI agent that understands you and does your bidding and can work very, very autonomously and is always on and sits there in the background. And again, like, let's just keep the geek hat on for a moment, then we'll talk about what's probably the really, really obvious concerns about this. It has an agent that can run on your desktop. I believe it has a browser plugin. Browser plugins are very, very powerful. They can see all the sites you visit. They can see the cookies for your sites. They can see the information you enter into sites. That allows it to do things like help check you in for flights. I assume you need to already be authenticated to the airline, unless you also give it access to all your passwords and things. So just for a moment, imagine you plug it into your password manager and it has access to all your credentials. And again, keep the geek hat on and then we'll talk about the obvious problems with that. But as soon as it starts having access to everything that you as a human would have access to, and it can start to do things on your behalf, granted, it could do some very amazing things. If it can plug in via API key, so the legitimate way, not the dodgy screen scraping way or anything, but via API into your Gemini account or your ChatGPT account or your Anthropic Claude, like any of the different things wherever you have your AI bits, and it can see and understand your history, and it can use enough intelligence to start giving you things that are relevant for you and doing things on your behalf that are relevant, that's kind of amazing. Watching some of the videos, and I don't know who these AI influencers are. They seem to be popular. And some of them would be like, yeah, so I just like left Claude but overnight, and then it wrote this other feature and submitted a PR into GitHub, and then I just went and accepted the PR, and now I have another feature in my app. And how amazing is this? And it sounds fun until you get to all of the really, really obvious problems. I don't care if it's self-hosted in your own environment or if you stand it up on AWS somewhere or like whatever it is, but as soon as you start having any sort of autonomous agent, whether we slap it with the AI term or not, that can do things on your behalf, should anyone have access to that agent, that creates a massive opportunity, right? Like for the bad guys. Opportunity for you too, because you can do really, really cool stuff, but it creates a massive risk. And I've always felt like I've got like the devil and the angel on my shoulder, because on the one side it's like, you know how much email you've got and how many different conversations you've got. If you just like plug this little agent in and actually get it to go through your things and help you organize your life, that would be amazing. And then on the other side, it's like, holy shit, can you imagine if this thing had access to all of the things that you've been discussing in your emails? You know, everything from all of the organizations I've been working with, the discussions with law enforcement, many years of lawyers and divorce, buying property or making investments. Like, imagine all the stuff that is in there. Yeah, the two shoulders. Anyway, so clearly that's a risk. I'm seeing lots of commentary around things like, and it seems to be particularly influencers. Why does everything suck when it involves influencers? Lots of stuff around influencers, like I'm getting it to watch my competitors and then to see which of their videos rank well to tell me which content is obviously successful so that I can do the same thing, and then I'll get it to like create me ads and then change the targeting of the ads, and again, like this is the theme, the constant theme for me. Every time I look at it, there's equal parts like this is really, really cool and this is just like horrifyingly risky. Any technology that emerges really, really quickly is full of problems, whether they be functional bugs, whether they be security bugs, whether they be just fundamental logic errors outside the scope of what anyone has thought about because it's so new. You know, the whole sort of move fast and break things, the saying is there for a reason. This is what happens when you go so fast. And to one of the comments earlier on at the start of this video about, have there been any big companies that have effectively had their asses handed to them yet by Claudebot, or whatever name came after that? Big companies generally aren't fast enough to start using this technology so early because it's really, really early days. I mean, this is 2026 technology. Like this did, as best I can tell, really just didn't exist at all before a few weeks ago, and didn't really get traction at all until about a week ago. when I did the video last week from home, it wasn't even last week, it was Monday, it was 6 days ago from home, I don't think I knew what that was. And I generally pay attention to stuff. Let's look at the comments, because I know people are going to be a bit horrified about some of this. Oh well. Paul here says, not in jail anymore. I assume this is the Vistama hacker. Not in jail anymore. He was released recently. From memory, he got a single-digit number of years, but that would be a very low single-digit number of years, since I think he only got picked up in 2020, something like that. Anyway. Gordon, I think living in the future, it would have been 24. Okay, that was the old subject. On the new stuff, Gordon also says Claudebot is crazy. Some people using it very recklessly. Not that there's a safe way. Look, I tell you what I think the safe way would be. I think the safe way would be if you have a sandboxed environment which is not connected to your other personal sensitive things. I think that would be the safe way. And there's a part of me that's tempted to play with it to do that. However, I think a huge amount of the value is in connecting to your personal things so that it can actually do stuff that is useful and targeted for you. I was thinking while watching it, it's like once, this is a grassroots movement. I forget the name of the guy who's behind the open source project, but someone who has obviously started this from very, very simple beginnings. Once that evolves into the point where the Apples and the Googles of the world start to build this into our normal devices, and have the security teams to put the guardrails and the privacy considerations and things around it. If this is like the little glimpse to the future, like it's wild. But right now, yeah, I agree with you. People are using it very recklessly. JMR says, I think I saw this recommended to me by GitHub. When I log in, it recommends projects for me to look at. I was highly skeptical. But give it credit. Like it's wild. And I think we sometimes don't give these projects, and when I say these projects, whether it's the grassroots open source stuff like this, or whether it is the open AIs of the world, I feel like sometimes we don't give enough credit because we get so focused on a bunch of the shitty ways that it gets used. But this is amazing. Like, it is very, very, very cool technology. It's very cool. Just got to figure out how to use it properly. Gordon says, it's insane because it's the dream to have an assistant, so good, but the risk is too high. Yeah, but this is the elevator pitch, right? It's like, wouldn't you love to have someone who works for you 24/7 and you don't pay anything, other than maybe you're buying a Mac Mini or what's the other Mac Studio to run it on, and then you may be paying some license fees for your different AI services. Yeah, but it's compared to paying a person, it's close enough to free that let's just round it down and call it free. JMR's been using AI a lot. I've been using it to eat healthier. Oh, good point. I've been using it for things, like when we've been here. Incidentally, ChatGPT doesn't work here. It doesn't work in Singapore either. I think that's probably a licensing thing. Grok works, regardless of all of the peripheral crap around Elon. Grok seems to actually be pretty good. So it's actually been really good to say, hey, give me the history of Hong Kong, or what was this island originally for, or what did the British really do? It's been really, really good for that. And I know that is a very, very simple use case. I'm sure many of us use AI in lots of different ways. I'm using it a lot for various coding things. Anyway, we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. Let's keep it on the Claude thing here. Matthew says, an employee with privileged access is the most likely vector for a company breach, but arguably access controls in large businesses should control this. Yeah, that's why large businesses don't have security breaches then. I think, I know big companies have already got very, very well established protocols around the use of AI, because clearly the risks are so high, particularly if you were to run something like, what are we calling it now? Is OpenClaw now, as of 4:47 Hong Kong time, Sunday the 1st of January, is that the name that it is? Is OpenClaw succeeding Moltbot, which succeeded Claudebot? Let me know if I got this right. Let's say it's OpenClaw for the moment. I assume that would well and truly be within the scope of the AI policies that any organisation has. Be kind of curious to know, not having been in a big organisation for a long time now, but do the Pfizers of the world, just to pick my old employer, do they have like a corporate on-prem AI strategy where there is like ChatGPT, for want of a better term, not necessarily on-prem, but part of the corporate instance? Is it like ChatGPT, Microsoft 365, where you just pay your subscription, then the whole company gets to use it? I'd be interested. Matthew says, I think the safe way is to treat this as a separate individual, like an employee with restricted access. That's a really good way of putting it, actually. I partly agree, and I'll tell you where I hesitate. It's the segmentation of access and control, which I think is very good. You treat it like an employee, so such that you give them the principle of least permissions, you give them only what they need in order to do their job, you have the ability to revoke their access, and so on and so forth. I think the bit that concerns me still is we're just not clear enough around things like the risks of, say, prompt injection. Now, in order for it to do a good job, it's still going to need a lot of access to both read and write. So it's going to need to be able to perform tasks, send emails on your behalf, whatever else. If it is at risk of prompt injection, so this is where some malicious third party is able to convince it to do something, or it just simply goes Skynet, right? Like develops a mind of its own and starts doing weird shit. Even principle of least permissions, giving it just what it needs to do its job, can still create a massive risk that a normal human would be able to go, hang on a second, I probably shouldn't do this because of the consequences. I don't have enough confidence that the OpenClaw AI of today has the ability to not completely go off the rails. Yeah, like Joel says, doomsday clock is really getting close to midnight. Yeah, I know. Marek, we've been using Claude in agentic coding capacity because it's restricted to project directories and a query response capability. It's okay, fantastic when working with new languages. Yep, sounds fine. Gordon, Siri 2. Now, isn't it interesting just how shit Siri looks? Like, frankly, it didn't look great when it first launched. It's like, well, it can basically do a bit of speech to text and sometimes get it right, and that's about it. It looks really crap now. So this will be an interesting year. I think if Apple doesn't really, really ramp up a Siri 2 and AI strategy, did I read correctly that Apple's done a deal with Google, so they're going to like roll Gemini into all of their things as their AI of choice? I've got to stop saying her name too, because I'm wondering why my iPad, this is what I'm looking at my iPad. Me, but all the comments. That lady keeps flashing the little AI thing, which is meant to sound like AI, but it's just dumb speech to text. So let's avoid saying her name. Marek says, almost like having a grad working for you. And that's the problem. Think of the grads coming out of uni now. Yeah, and like I get the temptation to make that analogy. But again, a human, an adult human, is able to apply, still at least today, reasoning beyond which OpenClaw is going to. To answer your AI strategy, yes. Where I am, there's a whole onboarding process and controls being implemented by the ops team, as well as T's and C's responsible use. Yeah, well, companies do love their T's and C's, their policies. Gordon says, isn't the issue that your PA would have a good quality of access to your data? Yes. Social engineering a bot is easier than a human. Well, it's a good question, isn't it? And I wonder, I mean, social engineering is, I guess if we think about it in the capacity of causing someone to do something that they wouldn't normally do because they've been subject to trickery. Whereas the bot, we're worried about it potentially just taking commands verbatim from another party, the prompt injection risk. We're also worried about it becoming self-actualizing enough, and this is part of what I've seen represented as the value proposition of what do we call it now, OpenClaw, is that it's self-actualizing enough that it can start to learn and figure out things that it should do independently without you explicitly prompting it to do that. Now, I'm sure that could be really good, but I have seen Terminator. I know how it ends. JMR has a phone running an AI model for content recommendations. It's learning my preferences and presents articles. Yep. Gordon says, yep, Apple is going to use Gemini as the best model. Okay, so I heard that bit of news right. Siri, Matthew says, Siri, Google Home, Alexa, it's surprising none are even close to what's possible today. It is, and I wonder if the reason for that is because those organisations do need to put so many more guardrails around it. You know, when you're like one guy out there building an open source project, I assume it's just the one guy. I don't know if there's a big community around it. Well, probably is now. But let's say you're one small group of people just hacking away building something. Your ability to move fast and break things, to experiment, to put things out there that are not robustly tested, that is fundamentally different to a company the size of Apple or Google, where their reach is, and just to be clear, I have no doubt whatsoever that they're building lots of amazing stuff at the moment internally, but putting it out there, that reach is so big. The privacy implications, the legal implications, the ramifications of getting anything wrong to the point where it actually does harm, and potentially serious physical harm as well, when you think about all the possible use cases. They have to approach this stuff in such a more thought out, long-term, careful, considerate. They're always going to be way behind. And that's what we're really starting to feel, you know, because they're just gradually increasing and everything else is just skyrocketing. We'll see. Let's see what this year brings. I really think this year they're going to have to pull something out of the hat. But yeah. JMR says a phone seems to be superior to a Raspberry Pi because it's optimized for AI. And I mean, a Raspberry Pi is a very, very low spec too, when you think about it. It's amazing for what it is, but yeah. All right, folks, I'm going to start to wrap it up there. I'll be home on Friday. I'll do a video either on Friday or Saturday morning. My new PC arrived. I'm very, very excited about this. I was thinking I'd have to leave it until I got back because it came in a massive crate. I thought I'd have to leave it until I was getting back because I had to write the presentation for Interpol tomorrow. But I got that done in time. I have popped it open. I've plugged all the different things back in, done all the basic configuration, just started to have a play with it. It looks epic. I've run some very, very early benchmarks, including benchmarks in the old one as well. But I think what I'm going to do is I will wait. I might even wait and do this thing on Saturday next week at home. It should be Friday Arvo for the folks in Europe and other parts of the world. So let's, yeah, J-Mar, it's hard not to open a new PC. It was there. It was tempting me. It was there calling my name. I was like, I've got to get into this. So yeah, I'm going to give it a good run, and then I'll hopefully be able to talk about it when I get home next week. So anyway, thanks for watching. I'm going to go out and get my Peking duck soon, and yeah, I'll tell you how it goes with Interpol when I get back. Yeah, jet lag. When I get home and talk to you next week. See you, folks.